The concrete was 2 meters thick, cold, German, engineered with Teutonic precision to stop anything the Americans could throw at it. And on that black October morning in 1944, deep inside the bowels of the Westwall, what the Allies called the Siegfried Line, the men of the Waffen-SS were laughing. They had every reason to. Outside, the shells were screaming in. American M105 howitzers, 155mm long toms, heavy metal raining down from gray skies over the German frontier. Each impact shook the earth like the fist of an angry god. But inside the pillbox, the men barely flinched. The walls were reinforced concrete, rebar lattices woven tight as chainmail. 2 full meters of poured stone and German engineering between them and the war. The shells hit and bounced. 75mm tank rounds deflected off the sloped casemates like raindrops off a steel helmet. The laughter echoed in the dark. One machine gunner, hunched behind his MG-42, lit a cigarette and grinned. The bunker was warm, dry, impenetrable. Outside, men were dying in the mud. Inside, they were invincible. Or so they thought. The Siegfried Line was not a line at all. It was a vision of hell rendered in concrete and steel, stretching nearly 400 miles along Germany's western border. From the Swiss frontier all the way north to the Dutch lowlands, the Third Reich had poured the industrial might of an entire nation into a single defensive masterstroke. Over 18,000 bunkers, pillboxes, observation posts, gun casemates, command centers buried so deep into the earth they could survive a direct hit from a battleship. And in front of them, the dragon's teeth, rows upon rows of pyramid-shaped concrete obstacles, tank traps. Each one a meter tall, planted in staggered lines 5 deep, sometimes 10, designed with brutal simplicity. Channel the enemy armor into pre-sighted kill zones where 88mm flak guns and PaK-40 anti-tank cannons could tear them apart at leisure. Between the teeth, minefields. Thousands upon thousands of Teller mines and S-mines, the dreaded bouncing Bettys that left waist-high before detonating in a cloud of shrapnel. Barbed wire in coils thick as a man's torso. Anti-personnel stakes. Fire lanes swept clean of cover. It was a killing ground. And in the autumn of 1944, the American Third Army, General George Smith Patton Jr.'s armored spearhead, slammed headlong into it. The weather that October was biblical. Cold rain turned the fields of the Tsar into a sucking morass of mud that swallowed men to the knee. Fog rolled in from the river valleys, thick and gray, cutting visibility to 30 meters. The kind of weather that turned modern war into a medieval brawl. Close, ugly, and personal. Patton's boys had been racing since Normandy, across France, through the hedgerows, liberating Paris, chasing a broken Wehrmacht east toward the Rhine. The Third Army had covered more ground in 3 months than any army in modern history. They were tankers, motorized infantry, mechanized death on wheels. But now, the wheels had stopped. The Siegfried Line rose before them like a fortress from another age, and the American advance shattered against it like a wave against a seawall. The first assaults were textbook. Infantry from the 4th Armored Division moved forward under the cover of artillery. Squads of riflemen in wool overcoats and steel pots, M1 Garins at the ready, advancing in staggered bounds across open ground. Behind them, M4 Sherman tanks, 33 tons of riveted steel and American optimism, churned forward through the mud, turrets swiveling, scanning for targets. The Germans let them get close. Discipline. Patience. The hallmark of well-trained defenders. The pillboxes sat silent, camouflaged with sod and netting, invisible against the autumn hillsides. The Americans advanced. 50 meters. 30. 20. Then the MG-42s opened up. The sound was unlike anything else on the battlefield. Not the slow, methodical chatter of the American Browning. The MG-42, the Hitler saga, the Hitler buzzsaw screamed. 1,200 rounds per minute. A ripping, tearing sound like the sky being shredded in half. Tracers arced out from the firing slits in lazy red lines, and where they touched, men died. GIs crumpled in the mud. Some didn't even scream. The Garand was a beautiful rifle. Accurate, semi-automatic, the best infantry weapon of the war. But it was useless here. You cannot shoot what you cannot see. You cannot flank what has interlocking fields of fire. You cannot advance when every square meter of ground is pre-sighted and zeroed. The assault stalled, then broke. The survivors crawled back through the mud, dragging their wounded, leaving their dead. The bunkers remained untouched. The armor fared no better. The M4 Sherman was a good tank, reliable, fast, easy to produce. America built 50,000 of them, and they won the war by sheer numbers. But the Sherman had a fatal flaw. Its armor was thin. Welded plates, 76 millimeters at the thickest point. Sloped, yes, but still vulnerable. And the Germans knew it. As the Shermans advanced, the 88 millimeter guns spoke. Flak 36s and Pak 40s, hidden in reinforced casemates, firing armor-piercing rounds with muzzle velocities that could punch through a Sherman's glacis plate like a nail through tin. The first Sherman took a hit to the turret. The shell went clean through. The tank didn't explode. It just stopped, dead in the water. The crew bailed out, stumbling through the smoke. The second Sherman brewed up, a direct hit to the ammo rack. Nearly 100 rounds of 75 millimeter high explosive cooked off in a chain reaction that sent the turret 20 feet into the air. The infantry called them Ronsons, after the cigarette lighter. Lights first time, every time. By nightfall, the attack had failed completely. 14 tanks lost, over 200 men dead or wounded. The Siegfried Line had not even been scratched. And deep inside the bunkers, the Germans were still laughing. George Patton arrived at the front 2 days later. He came in a jeep, flanked by outriders, immaculate even in the freezing rain. Polished boots, lacquered helmet liner with the 3 silver stars, a tanker's jacket tailored to perfection, and on his hips, his trademark, 2 revolvers. On his right hip, a Colt single-action Army, 45 caliber, cavalry model, 7.5-inch barrel. On his left, a Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum. Both revolvers had custom grips, ivory, not pearl, ivory. Patton was famously particular about that distinction. Only a pimp from a cheap New Orleans whorehouse would carry a pearl-handled pistol, he once said. His were ivory, carved, elegant, the tools of a patrician warrior. He stepped out of the jeep and surveyed the carnage. Burned out Shermans, shattered tree lines, mud churned into a moonscape by artillery. His face was stone. A regimental commander briefed him on the situation. The bunkers were impervious to artillery. The infantry couldn't get close. The tanks couldn't crack them. Flamethrowers had been tried. The firing slits were too narrow, and the flames couldn't penetrate deep enough to kill the crew. Explosives required engineers to get within arm's reach, which was suicide. Patton listened, said nothing. His jaw worked. Then he turned to his chief engineer. "Can you bury them?" The engineer blinked. "Sir?" "The bunkers. Can you bury the sons of bitches alive?" There was a pause. Then the engineer's face changed. He understood. Yes, sir. We can. The M4 Sherman Tank-Dozer was not a glamorous weapon. It was a standard M4 medium tank, 33 tons, welded hull, cast turret, fitted with a massive hydraulic earth-moving blade. The M1 Dozer blade, 11 feet wide, 4 feet tall, controlled by a hydraulic piston system mounted to the bow of the tank. It could lift 10 tons of earth, push through rubble, clear roadblocks, dig tank emplacements, or bury a bunker. The Tank-Dozers had been used in Normandy for engineering work, clearing beach obstacles, filling craters, breaching hedgerows. But here, on the Siegfried Line, they would be repurposed into instruments of terror. The plan was brutally simple. American infantry and artillery would pin the bunker, suppress the firing slits with machine gun fire and white phosphorus smoke, blind them, keep their heads down. Then the Tank-Dozer would roll forward, blade down, and quite literally bury the structure under tons of mud and earth. Seal the firing slits, cover the ventilation shafts, entomb the crew. Alive. The first attack came at dawn. A single pillbox. Reinforced concrete. Walls 2 meters thick. Roof 3 meters. Firing slits facing west, covering a stretch of open ground seeded with dragon's teeth and wire. Intelligence estimated 6 to 8 defenders inside. Waffen-SS veterans. Fanatics. The American artillery opened up first. Not to destroy, they knew that was impossible, but to obscure. Smoke shells, white phosphorus, high explosive mixed with thermite to throw up clouds of burning fog. Within minutes, the entire hillside was invisible. Then the infantry moved. 2 squads, armed with Browning automatic rifles and a single Browning M1919 heavy machine gun on a tripod. They set up 30 meters from the bunker and opened fire. Not aimed shots, suppression, pouring lead into the firing slits, forcing the Germans to keep their heads down. Behind them, the Tank-Dozer came. The sound was monstrous. A Ford GAA V8 engine, 500 horsepower, 18 tons of steel track grinding through mud and stone. The hydraulic blade was down, angled forward, scraping the earth like the prow of some industrial warship. Inside the bunker, the laughter had stopped. The German machine gunner crouched behind his MG-42, staring out through the firing slit. All he could see was smoke, white, burning. The stench of phosphorus seeped through the ventilation shafts, acrid and choking. Outside, the American machine guns hammered against the concrete in a constant metallic drumbeat. He tried to return fire, but the instant he shoved the barrel through the slit, a burst of BAR fire forced him back. Ricochets screamed inside the bunker. Someone was shouting, the lieutenant, telling them to hold, to stay calm. Then they heard it. A low, grinding roar, mechanical, relentless, growing louder. One of the younger soldiers, a boy really, 17, conscripted from Bavaria 3 months ago, looked at the lieutenant with wide eyes. "What is that?" The lieutenant didn't answer, because he knew. The Tank-Dozer hit the front of the bunker like a landslide. The blade bit into the earth, scooping up mud, stones, and shattered tree roots, pushing it forward in a growing wave. The Sherman's engines screamed, treads churned, hydraulics hissed. The American tank commander, standing in the turret hatch, goggles caked with mud, shouted into the intercom, "Forward! Keep pushing!" The pile grew. Wet earth slammed against the concrete face of the pillbox. The dozer blade angled up, lifting the mass, dumping it higher, covering the firing slits, burying the observation ports. Tons of dirt and stone sliding down, packing tight against the bunker's walls. Inside, the light went out. It happened in seconds. The firing slit, the narrow rectangular gap through which the MG-42 had been spitting fire moments before, was suddenly black,
The engineers
Covered.
marked this route clear.
Sealed.
But the terrain looks rough. We need cover.
The German machine
Agreed.
gunner
Update
lunged
command.
forward,
Command, enemy sighted,
clawing
Hill
at the mud
403,
that now
moving
pressed
fast.
against the
I'm
opening.
engaging now, requesting
But
fire
it was
support,
packed
over.
solid, immovable.
All right, lower the blade, push
Someone
forward,
screamed.
lights down, moving out.
The
Keep it
ventilation
steady, watch the
shaft,
tracks,
a
roger
narrow
that.
pipe running up through the roof designed to pull in fresh air and vent the gun smoke, was next. The grinding
Reloading.
sound was
Copy.
directly
Ready in
above
3.
them now.
Gun hot, standing
An
by.
avalanche of earth. The shaft choked, blocked. The bunker went silent except for the sound of breathing.
The enemy's
7
advancing.
men.
We need to flank them now.
Trapped.
Understood. I'll lead the tanks from the right.
Buried.
Good. Let's move.
Alive. The air inside a reinforced concrete pillbox is finite. German military engineers had calculated it precisely. For a crew of 8, with standard ventilation, you had approximately 6 hours of breathable air before carbon dioxide levels became dangerous. If the ventilation was compromised, cut off entirely, that window collapsed to under 90 minutes. In the pitch-black darkness, the men began to panic. The youngest soldier was hyperventilating, gasping, clawing at the walls. The lieutenant shouted at him to calm down, to conserve oxygen, but his own voice was shaking. Another man, a veteran, older, steady, lit a match. The flame flickered, weak, yellow. It illuminated 7 faces, pale and slick with sweat, eyes wide in the dim glow. Then the match went out. The darkness returned. Absolute, suffocating. Someone began to pray. Another vomited. The sound of retching echoed in the cramped space, and the stench mixed with the sweat and the gun oil and the lingering phosphorus. Above them, the grinding continued. The tank-dozer was still working, piling more earth, more weight, sealing them deeper. One of the men stumbled to the steel door, the emergency exit, a reinforced hatch designed to let the crew escape if the bunker was overrun. He threw the bolt, shoved.
They're getting closer.
Move.
Prepare the machine gun.
The door
Herr
opened
Hauptmann.
outward,
It's ready.
and
Good.
now there
On
were
my command,
tons
hold
of
nothing
earth
back.
pressed against it. He shoved again, screamed, threw his shoulder against the steel. Nothing. They were entombed. Outside, the tank-dozer reversed. The American tank commander surveyed his work. The bunker was gone, completely buried under a mound of earth 15 feet high.
What is it? They're
No firing
close to the
slits,
breach!
no vents, no trace that it had ever been there, except for a vague geometric shape beneath the dirt. He keyed the radio.
The water's picking up.
Bunker neutralized,
I hear it.
moving
Something's
to
not
the
right.
next target.
Look, up there!
The
We
Sherman
need to move.
pivoted, treads biting into the mud, and rumbled forward toward the next pillbox. Behind it, the mound sat
Push! It's
silent.
giving way! I see
The
light! Keep
psychological
going!
effect was
One last
immediate.
push! We're
Word
through!
spread through the German
The enemy is
defensive line
advancing
like
from the east.
wildfire.
We must hold this position at all
The
costs.
Americans
Check
weren't
your weapons
destroying
and
the
stay alert.
bunkers.
No one falls back.
They were burying them, entombing the crews, leaving them to suffocate in the dark. It was a terror
I hear
unlike
them. They're
anything
getting
the
closer.
Wehrmacht had faced.
We have to hold out. We have no choice.
Artillery, you could endure.
Heavenly Father,
Airstrikes,
give us strength.
you could hide from.
Amen. We
But
face this together.
This was something primal.
The matches won't last.
The fear of
We
being
need to move
buried
soon.
alive.
I hear movement
trapped
outside.
in a concrete coffin, clawing at the walls as the air ran out. Within 48 hours, entire sections of the Siegfried Line began surrendering. German soldiers, battle-hardened veterans who had held the line against Soviet human waves at Kursk, who had survived the hedgerow meat grinder in Normandy,
They're here!
threw down
Incoming!
their weapons
Where?
at the
How
first
close?
sound
North
of a
sector.
tank-dozer
We move
engine.
now. What's the plan? Flank
White
them. Let's
flags
go.
appeared from bunkers that had never been touched. Entire platoons emerged, hands raised, faces pale, begging not to be buried. Patton's engineers had cracked the impenetrable fortress not with firepower, but with fear.
Quiet.
Patton himself observed the breakthrough from a captured German observation post. He stood on the roof of the bunker, binoculars in hand, watching as his Third Army poured through
Man,
the gap
this
in the
is A-Ball
Siegfried
1.
Line.
Enemy armor advanced.
Shermans,
Push immediate air support.
half-tracks,
Over. Copy
deuce
that.
and a half
Movement
trucks
shape.
loaded
Out.
with infantry. The entire mechanized weight of American industrial might rolling east toward the Rhine. His chief
Hands
of
up.
staff
It's
approached.
moving right at us. I see it.
Sir,
What's our move?
the engineers
Hold
are
steady. It
reporting
might pass.
minimal
It's
resistance.
not stopping.
The entire sector is collapsing.
Keep moving. Don't stop. Yes,
Patton
sir.
lowered the binoculars.
Watch for mine.
His face was unreadable. Good.
All right, move forward.
He said
Hands where I
quietly.
can see them. Yeah, we
Fixed
are coming.
fortifications
Faster.
are a
No
monument
tricks.
to the stupidity of man.
Get up.
If
Enemy
mountain
ahead.
ranges
Yeah,
and
ready.
oceans can be
Move
overcome,
now. I'm with you.
anything built by man can be overcome. He paused, looking back at the line of buried bunkers, now just shapeless mounds of earth
Mark it down.
stretching
Position
across
surrendered.
the hillside.
Copy. Noting time and
And
coordinates.
we
Confirmed.
just
All
paved
secure.
over theirs. The final count would take weeks to compile. Over 300 bunkers neutralized. Not destroyed. Buried. The crews, some estimates put the number at over 2,000 men, either suffocated, surrendered, or clawed their way out through emergency tunnels if they were lucky enough to have them. The American Third Army didn't slow
Hold
down.
still, I've got you.
By December, they were
like
across
hell.
the German
You're
border.
good to go. On
By
3.
January, they were fighting in the streets of German cities. By April, they had linked up with Soviet forces on the Elbe. The Siegfried Line, Hitler's impenetrable wall, his Fortress Europe, the concrete masterpiece that was supposed to stop the Allied advance cold, had been reduced to a footnote. Buried.
That's better.
Forgotten.
All right, mount up.
Paved
Let's
over
move.
by
You
American
heard him.
bulldozers and the relentless industrial logic of total war. There is a moment in every conflict when the old rules stop working, when the calculus of battle shifts, and what was once unthinkable becomes necessary. The Siegfried Line was such a moment. Patton understood this. He was a student of history, a classicist, a man who read Caesar and Napoleon and
Keep
understood
moving!
that
Push through the
war
mud!
is not a gentleman's sport. It is butchery dressed in doctrine. And the butcher who wins is the one willing to adapt fastest. The Tank-Dozers were not elegant. They were not honorable. But they worked. And in the freezing rain of that brutal autumn of 1944, as the American Third Army rolled over the bones of the Third
We push
Reich's
here,
last
at first
great
light.
defensive
What
line,
about their flank?
George
Covered. We
Patton
move
stood
here.
on the border
Agreed.
of Germany,
Let's move.
ivory-handled revolvers on his hips, and watched the future bury the past. Literally. The concrete was 2 meters thick, but in the end, it didn't matter, because you cannot fight what you cannot breathe. And deep inside those bunkers, in the cold, the dark, the suffocating silence, the laughter had long since stopped.